some guy from their side started, attacking our people. And our people started, defending themselves, and a fight broke out. It lasted about 1 minute, and after they dispersed, we reorganized and started picketing again. Then they lined up, on the curb right across from us, and then started chanting counter slogans. And
there could be disciplinary action taken if it is found that some university regulations have been broken, and there could be some limitation of permission in the future. But those are things we'll have to determine in the next few days.
Police and Tinker security personnel were kept busy this afternoon and late into the evening conducting a car-to-car search for the man who robbed the credit union office at the Tinker Air Force Base. The FBI ordered the search shortly after the mid-afternoon robbery. They were looking for a black male in his mid to late 20s, or perhaps an accomplice who might take the money off the base for him. Some drivers were exasperated with the lines and opted to walk off the base and return for their cars later. They were duly searched. There were several employees and a number of customers in the credit union office when the robbery occurred, but though the gunman fired 2 shots, no one was injured.
Came in, stood next to the counter for a moment or two, then he fired a shot into the ceiling, indicated it was a holdup, went through the manager's office, got the office manager, went down behind the teller line, took the money from the cash drawers, exited around the other end of the counter, fired another shot into the ceiling, and then exited through the door and took off through the hangar.
Security is still tight at Tinker Air Force Base. Other than a description of the suspect, the FBI has no idea who to arrest in the $20,000 haul. In addition, there are as many places to hide the money on the base as there are employees, and there is the fear that the money or the suspect will not be found before it is spirited off the base. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4, at Tinker Air Force Base. If you're into statistics, you might be impressed with Oklahoma City's crime stats for last month. The statistics indicate that violent crimes are decreasing in Oklahoma City, at least when compared to May of 1980. Only 4 homicides were committed in Oklahoma City last month, compared with 6 for the month last year. Police say that they have solved 3 of those. Aggravated assaults dropped from 168 to 150, while reported rapes dropped from 31 for the month to 26. Some crimes did experience increases. Burglaries were up 7 out of nearly 1,000, and thefts jumped from 1,221 to 1,293. But Police Chief Tom Hagee says that overall it indicates a downward trend.
We set aside some detectives and patrolmen to work together in a specified area, say a square mile or 5 square miles, to combat burglary and larceny. And they made a number of arrests. It was very effective, and I think that's one of the reasons with the neighborhood associations that we brought burglary down in the month of May. And I think the key to police service is being highly visible and being available and being able to respond to the calls when you call.
Neighborhood watch programs are another reason for the decline in crime in Oklahoma City. In some areas like this one, entire neighborhoods have banded together to take their cut out of crime. And because of the success of these programs, Police Chief Hagee wants to continue to cultivate the relationship between the community and the police department. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4 in Northwest Oklahoma City.
Poteau business district used to stretch for several blocks along Dewey Street, but now an ugly black scar covers nearly a square block of the area.
Investigators from the State Fire Marshal's office say the blaze broke out here in the Central Bar during the wee hours of Saturday morning, and by daylight, the fire had engulfed nearly every business on the block.
When firefighters finally contained the inferno around 7 o'clock yesterday morning, it had burned out a total of 9 businesses.
It started in the bar, which would be the middle building below us. And as that burned, the back wall blew out. It went across the alley and ignited the hardware and the furniture store. And at the same time, of course, it was coming this way, and it was also spreading in that direction. Those 3 buildings were all on the same level, and there's nothing to stop that.
Weary Poteau volunteer firefighters were still tending the smoldering blaze this afternoon, extinguishing the last couple of hot spots. The State Fire Marshal investigator has already collected evidence of the fire's origin. He says the blaze began with some flammable liquid in the back of the bar. He suspects the fire was set deliberately. Arson experts are also checking out 3 more suspicious fires in Poteau. This store, a market, and a large home all mysteriously burned in the past week. The rash of unsolved fires has made Poteau residents suspicious.
Of course, we thought the fire at first was just, pure accident, but I understand more people get to talking and we get, this kind of coincidence that we have so many fires that come up so soon behind one another, and we all get to wondering, if somebody might be setting them.
Poteau city officials are concerned. They know that youngsters will be playing with fireworks this July 4th weekend. They're worried that perhaps a child's firecracker might finish what an apparent arsonist started. Scott Wallace, Action 4 in Poteau.
We're fighting for equality, we shall not be moved. We're fighting for equality, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved.
Equal Rights Amendment supporters hope Oklahoman legislators will be moved to ratify the amendment during the next legislative session. So far, 35 states have passed the constitutional amendment, which would guarantee equal rights to all U.S. citizens, regardless of sex. But unless 3 more states ratify the E.R.A. within the next year, the amendment will die. So groups like the Oklahoma chapter of the National Organization for Women are making a concerted effort to get the E.R.A. passed in Oklahoma. They're lobbying private citizens and legislators alike.
So we can work on the personal level, and then we need to think politically, and we need to do a good lobby effort with our legislators. And as I say, reassure them that they are going to be rewarded for doing the courageous and the right thing and getting this passed.
Like the balloons released at the end of today's rally, E.R.A. backers hope their cause will really take off in the next 12 months. Scott Wallace, Action 4 in Stillwater.
Today is the first day this year Oklahoma City police are working without a contract. City negotiators and police are deadlocked on contract talks. Most police officers would like a 10.5% pay increase of their current salary. But the city proposes paying all officers $133 more per month, regardless of rank or seniority. And the proposal of having the city manager sit on the police review board does not sit well with many officers. City officials say their latest offer is better than the one last year. But police officers we talked with say it just isn't good enough.
Well, I believe it's not fair to the older officers and the command that have been here for the longest time are the ones getting the lowest percentage raise. And number one, I don't feel that the amount is enough. But number two, I think it's unfair to the older officers. In other words, it jeopardizes the officers that have been here the longest aren't getting the most money for it.
Okay, one more question. That being a citizen on the police review board, what are your feelings on that?
If it's chosen the right way, I think it could be very beneficial to the police department. But I think our present review board structure needs to be looked into in great detail.
Well, I think several of them didn't think it was equitable and gave each officer the same percentage of raise. For example, it figured out for a recruit about 13 or 14%, and maybe for a lieutenant back down about 7%. Also, we have to pay 2% more into the retirement on the first of the year, this year and next year. And, that takes away from it too, 4% over the next 2 years.
My personal objection was the 7.3% increase that I will get. I know the papers and the news keep saying that we're getting 9%. The percentage I will be receiving is 7.3.
Is that your main gripe then?
That's my main gripe. It's just a money gripe. As of the 1st of 1982, I will lose 2% of that, which will further decrease the raise.
So it seems money is the problem, and morale is low. Some officers we talk with say that many officers are quitting the force mainly because of the money. Another key issue is 2% of the officer's salary that must be paid into a retirement fund starting next year. Officers say they want that problem solved before they'll even consider another contract proposal. Ed Stewart, Action 4, the Oklahoma City Police Department.
Since Congress is planning to make cuts in the food stamp program to the tune of $1.5 billion, more than 1 million people will be affected. Last month in the state of Oklahoma, a little more than 200,000 people received the stamps. Now that's almost $7 million worth. If lawmakers get their way, some recipients in the Sooner State will not be eligible for stamps. That's according to the administrative assistant for the Oklahoma Department of Human Resources.
We anticipate that it'll eliminate 7% of the people currently receiving food stamps from the program, and of course it will make it more difficult for new applicants to be approved. We will not in the future be approving as many people as we currently do.
And Hogue says if the proposals are passed, they will go into effect October 1st. There's a good possibility a family of 4 that earns more than $11,000 would not be eligible for the stamps. Lawmakers are also considering putting people who receive the stamps into public service jobs in return for their benefits. In a move designed to save the government $20 million a month, Congress has decided not to give food stamps to workers on strike. Now, a lot of Americans agree with this philosophy. If you don't work, you don't eat. Ben McCain, Action 4.
Last Friday night, members of the Fraternal Order of Police in Oklahoma City rejected a contract proposal put before them by the city. The proposal was the result of more than 2 months of working towards a contract agreeable to both sides. The city felt that they had given as much as they could with the contract, but the police felt that their requests were as far as they could go as well. Because of the impasse, the FOP called for a federal mediator. In calling in the mediation, the city and the police are trying to avoid what happened in 1975. Police filed in front of city officials dropping their badges on the table, resigning en masse after a 3-day work slowdown. The strike lasted for 4 days, until the city agreed to meet the police pay demands and the patrolmen agreed to give in on other requests.
Lost a unit somewhere, I don't know where it is.
While the police were on strike, highway patrol troops and county sheriff's deputies manned the streets. City officials estimated the makeshift force at 3/4 the normal strength. But that was nearly 6 years ago, and no one wants it to happen again. With the mediators, it may take 6 to 8 weeks for a new settlement to be reached, but the negotiations will continue at least, and for that length of time, a strike has been averted. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4. Police were called to this house at 1519 East 42nd a little after 11 this morning. According to witnesses, the suspect, Danny Walker, had a pistol, and he was threatening people in the neighborhood. Walker was staying with his sister, Saritha Gregory. She says she and her boyfriend, Willie Walker, tried to calm her brother down, but to no avail.
I walked out, and he told me to call the cops. He didn't care because they couldn't do nothing to him. So I comes out and I goes to call the cops, and Willie had came out, and he had went next door and came out and come around the tree, and he came around the tree and he told him, he said, "You called me a punk." And so on and so on. He said, "No, son, I didn't call you a punk." And the next thing you know, he just shot at him.
After that, Gregory says her brother got in her car and drove away, and the victim was taken to Oklahoma Memorial. Later, police rushed to Northeast 50th and Eastern. That's where they took Walker into custody. Police say he's charged with 2 counts of assault with intent to kill. They say he also shot at a police officer before being caught. The victim, meanwhile, was treated for a gunshot wound to the head. He's reported in stable condition. Mark Pardee, Action 4 on the Northeast side.
People use natural gas to cook or heat their homes during the winter time. And the average Oklahoman ends up paying about $300 a year on their gas bills. Well, according to officials at Oklahoma Natural Gas Company, if deregulation were to go into effect today, it would end up costing consumers $60 more a year.
And if that were to take place for the ONG customer in Oklahoma, that would be roughly a 20% increase. We feel at Oklahoma Natural Gas that the NGPA Act of 1978 was adequate. The purpose of deregulation or decontrol is to try to stimulate some production and exploration.
And Watson says exploration is already taking place at a healthy rate. So while deregulation might mean a big boom to natural gas producers, many believe consumers would be hurt in a big way. Bella Shaw, Action 4.
He'd be here 5 years. He learned English very well, and he learned history. The negative attitude that immigration had towards his problem.
El fin de semana, la desesperación en que se encuentra mi familia fue la que me obligó a mí prácticamente a tomar esa decisión y la negativa de las autoridades de inmigración.
The desperation that he found himself in with his family and stuff obligated him to do what he did. And the negative attitude that immigration had towards his problem. He says it's a situation that's very explosive to him because he has every door that he has tried, everyone has said no. They could find another job for him. Finally realized that he is there. But he did write a letter, you know, and they just said no, and he called us and I called them, and they said no, that there was no way his family could come because of the priority that his family coming to.
Federal officials are investigating the name brand clothes chain. They say the Tulsa retailer's 7 Oklahoma outlets sold about 400 garments treated with tris. The clothes sold were children's sleepwear. Tris was banned in 1977 because the fire-retardant chemical was suspected of causing cancer of the skin, mouth, lungs, stomach, liver, and kidney. The pajamas were removed from the shelves back in March. But here's how to identify them in case you may have purchased one.
Okay, the ones that we supposedly had have a tie bottom, or they're sleepers with little feet in them. And they were blue, pink, yellow, and white. And the label that we had said Little Me on the label inside.
Wilson says his company was unaware the clothes were treated with tris. He says they obviously made a mistake by trusting the company they purchased them from, but he says if you do have one of the garments, bring them back to the store for a refund. Ted Brown, Action 4.
These men are making preparations for an outdoor concert near Norman being billed as the 1981 music explosion. What they're doing now is setting up equipment for the sound and lighting tower. They're working overtime to get things in order by Friday. The reason they've waited to the last minute is because the U.S. government filed a suit to stop the concert from being held on this Indian property. The promoters thought they might have to move the show. The 5 businessmen involved in this project had planned to lease this property. But because of certain restrictions on this Indian land, they were forced to buy it at an inflated price in order to hold the concert here. The attorney for the promoter said several legal steps had to be taken to sell the property.
It had to go through Albuquerque. Mr. Gallagher applied for removal of his trust status, and that had to go to Albuquerque, Anadarko, Shawnee, and Santa Fe finally, and that was the last step, and it was done this morning. It was executed in Santa Fe, and that means that the patent was issued to him and he was free to close the sale.
Really, you know, when we started out, we didn't realize this was a restricted ground. We was informed of that at a later date. And one of the solutions is to acquire the ground. We hadn't planned for that, but, you know, when you're a person in the community and you want to do the right thing and you commit yourself, then you have a duty. You really have a duty to come back and regroup and do what you have to do to perform. And that's what we've done.
The fact that there was only one day left to get everything ready, even the money men behind this entertainment extravaganza are out at the site putting equipment in place. They are expecting anywhere from 20 to 50,000 people to attend this outdoor show, which features Barbara Mandrell, Larry Gatlin, and other entertainers. Ben McCain, Action 4, near Norman.
That's right.
More fun to watch it back.
Thanks a lot, Lieutenant.
One of the biggest problems in the housing industry is that there are very few new home buyers. What used to be a coming of age for young adults has become an impossible dream in the last few years. High interest rates are knocking most young buyers out of the housing market. The answer is an adjustable mortgage. The rates fluctuate with the lending rates. When the lending rates decrease, so does the interest rates on the loan.
We were having to make long-range guesses on what the interest rates were going to do, and the market was so volatile it was impossible for us to do. So consequently, the interest rates reached the 17 and 18% level, and it really didn't help a whole lot because borrowers simply could not afford those kind of interest rates. And we're trying to move to a situation where the interest rates will be available for everyone to purchase a home and not just a select few.
A recent study shows that only 5% of the American consumers could currently qualify for a loan on the average home. Savings and loan companies are hoping that by making homes available to more people, they can help to stabilize the economy. And then perhaps interest rates will begin to drop. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4.
Zoo officials have waited 9 long years for him, but he finally came. This is Heiner. He's a rare and valuable Indian rhinoceros. Heiner and his half-sister E.R.A were purchased from the Berlin Zoo for almost $100,000. Their long trip ended today as they were welcomed to their new home at the Oklahoma City Zoo. It didn't take long for the animals to get accustomed to their new surroundings. They seemed to like having the eyes of Oklahoma upon them.
We had to go through the German Democratic People's Republic, and that was an experience. The male, Heiner, started rocking back and forth, just rearing up, and seemed very agitated about something. Maybe it was the communists, I don't know.
I always wanted a baby Indian rhinoceros when I was a kid. I was willing to trade my sister for one, but my parents wouldn't agree. So I guess having one at the zoo is the next best thing. Bill Ross, Action 4.
Fly heading 260. Expect 17,000, 10 minutes after departure. Turn right heading 185.